Hello everybody and welcome to a very special episode of the Casual Gamecast, episode 68, where we are joined by one very special guest. But first of all, if you are unfamiliar with the Casual Gamecast, you, my friend, have stumbled upon what is by far the most casual of gaming podcasts on the interwebs, a Casual Gamecast, if you will. This is a topic-based gaming podcast and we are delighted to have you. But we are not alone. I am Phil Keogh as per usual, and I am joined by the wonderful, the electric, the man in the robe, Shane Bowe, who recently celebrated a birthday. Happy birthday, Shane Bowe!
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here as always. Happy to be robed up and comfy, you know.
I do like that. And I do like for all of the video watchers that you kind of gave us a nice little, like, Pope wave. You know, it was very regal. I like what this robe is doing to you, my friend.
It's given me a sense of superiority over everyone on the planet.
And God knows you needed more of that. And if we are talking about birthdays and very, very honoured individuals, I have to say it is an absolute pleasure to welcome another man who recently celebrated his birthday, but most importantly, a gaming and, I guess, pop culture, comics. This man, he covers an awful. He's a legend in the Irish industry. You know him, you love him. It's Wayne Talbot of the Pubcast and many other items. Wayne, hello, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, I just realised that I'm really gutted because I didn't make it to episode 69 instead.
I know.
Which I think would have been... but still, I'm here. So thank you for having me.
Hey, you can always come back. No problem. You're welcome back anytime.
There is an
always
open
come back for
invitation, my friend.
Always come back for 69.
We all do. We all do. What man amongst us wouldn't? And actually, that is very fun to touch on for a second, if you forgive the pun, because next week is indeed episode 69. And ladies and gentlemen, I was going to save this until the end of the show, but a sneak peek, we are planning on having a sexy cast next week. Yes, we are leaning so hard into that really bad joke. So stick around with us next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Wayne, you are more than welcome to get sexy timed with us. But Wayne, thank you so much for joining us. Where might people know you from on the interwebs and even in real life?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the Irish Pubcast is the podcast that myself and three of my other good buddies are hosts on, Kim, Jill and Darren. And also, I am one of the founders and runners of Rogue Comics Ireland, which you can find me on there as well. I'm a writer and colorist and artist. I've created and published 2 books myself, but we also have a full library of comic books on there with a plethora of fantastically brilliant and talented writers and artists, editors, colorists, the works,
wow.
And they're all up there. So roguecomicsIreland.com is another place you can find my work and a load of other work that's well worth your time. And you can also find Irish Pubcast on YouTube, because we have just recently finished our first D&D campaign playthrough.
Very nice.
Which was a lot of fun over 2 years, 17 episodes, all up there for your enjoyment. And we will be very, very shortly jumping into campaign 2, which will be hopefully starting roughly probably the end of February.
That's very good. It's very impressive as well. We tried that here. I did up a big overlay and we got a guy that is very good at, you know, D&D campaign management or whatever. Shane, I know you're now getting into that, but you know, we got everyone together and we got a game going, and there's so much to kind of coordinate when you're talking about not only like the human aspect of it, of trying to get everybody together at the same time every week or every 2 weeks to kind of, you know, get it all together, but then like for those of us who are sorting out the audio or the video and all that, there's just so many moving pieces that I'm super impressed at anyone that can go through like multiple campaigns and just get it done. It's an accomplishment, sir.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts, but if everyone's enjoying themselves and getting into it, and if you get into D&D, it's dangerous. Like, trust me. It's dangerous. It's an addiction. It's kind of like when you get your first tattoo, you have to get another one. You have to keep going. And like my D&D Beyond character page is just a fucking sea of unlimited characters that I will never play. But it's like you're sitting on the bus and you just want something to do, and you just end up creating characters, you know,
and then you get them tattooed on your back and it's like a prison break situation. Yeah
full on but yeah, no, it is Dungeons and Dragons and any tabletop RPG, like, you know, Cthulhu or like a plethora of other ones, Pathfinder, even if you just do GURPS or any homebrew stuff, it's just fantastic stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Highly recommend getting into that world, because it's, even during these uncertain times, it's one of these balms that people like to have, and I think it's definitely helped me and my good friends through all of it, be it through tabletop simulation or actual playing Dungeons and Dragons or stuff like this on video or chat. Technology is great. If we'd had this pandemic in the 80s, we would have been all fucked.
That's what I was just about to say, is like, well, first of all, yes, like if this happened in the 80s, can you imagine being locked into your house with your mom and your dad or something, and you're just killing each other for 2 years? But isn't it kind of funny that D&D, of all things, and all those types of games like Cthulhu and all the rest, have like gone through this kind of renaissance during a time when people can't come together? D&D has never been more popular, like obviously that's because of technology innovations, like Beyond and Beyond 20 or whatever, and all of the online platforms to allow you to do it. But it's just, who could have predicted that board games would never be more popular in a time when you can't be in the same room with someone? But look, that's how it is. I do want to, I know that you are a very established human, but I do want to put more emphasis on that, is that you're, we were talking about this in the green room, of course, but just, for the listeners who may not be familiar, and although I'm sure most are, the Pubcast, this has been around for, I didn't even realize until you told me earlier, 12 years, 2010?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been an outlet for me. I started in 2010 with Simon Fitzgerald on board, myself and himself, just sat in the pub, sat in Doyle's corner, actually, that's where we recorded, and we waffled on about sci-fi and all sorts of shite. And then we got a friend of ours, Graham Doyle, in, and he was the third member. And then, the shifting sands of time, people leave and go off and do their own thing, and then the cast change. But I've been there since 2010, kind of the one mainstay, because I've got nothing else to do.
Somebody's got to keep it going, man.
Yeah, and the rest of the group came along. We got Darren, Kim, Jill, and we just solidified as a group. And there's now the four of us doing the podcast, and it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
And it's like, it's a great group of people, and we've met a lot of great things. And we were taken under the wing of a couple of conventions in Ireland, like Arcade Con, RIP. And it was just like one of the... Well, seriously, ArcadeCon was one of the best conventions ever, and they gave us our first chance as being hosts and guest interviewers and stuff like that, and so much fun.
Brilliant.
And then Dublin Comic Con, the folks at Dublin Comic Con got us in, and we started to do the guest interviews on stage, and we did that for a good few years. And then we decided to kind of turn our attention to the world of comics, and Rogue Comics was born out of that. And it's just been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun, and it's great to hear that people are still listening to us after all this time. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you can tell that the passion is there. Like, and as we were saying, and to anyone that's not familiar, like the Pubcast, 90% of the time or more is recorded in a pub. It's only now because of COVID that you've had to like rework things from the odd week or two, but like. Yeah. It is, for the most part, you guys get together around the table, a couple of drinks, and just banter about whatever it is that happened in social media, or not social media, in popular culture over the last week or however long it's been since you talked. And it's very like conversational, and that's what's absolutely fantastic about it. And even before I knew about your podcast, that's kind of like our aspirational goal. So I just eat your podcast up. Like, I have it for breakfast. It's lovely. But yeah, it's super humbling to have you here today. So thanks again, Wayne.
Oh, thank you. No, that means a lot. I really appreciate it.
And on your comics as well, I don't want to gloss over that. I know that is it 2 you have actively on the go at the moment?
Personally, I have 2 books out. Yeah. The Broker, and which is my first one, which was launched in 2017. It was the first actual official book launched on the label. Was The Broker, and that's with myself as the writer and colorist on part of it. And the artists on it are Rory Coleman and Brian Corcoran, and then another colorist, Timothy Brown, and then the letterer, Marina Gwynn. That's a team that was all put together to make this little book. That was my first book, and then the second comic that I published through Rogue was myself, Kev Keane, and Gillian Dempsey was the editor at that point. But Kev Keane has now his star is on the rise in the world of comics. If anyone reads comics out there, Kev Keane is now working with Todd McFarlane on Spawn.
Wow!
So I mean, he joined Rogue, did a few bits and bobs with Rogue. me and him and Jill put Nosferatu together, and we're working on our next book right now called The Town Called Kill, which is going to be a horror western book that the three of us are working on.
Sweet.
And it's going to be a big one. But Nosferatu was our last one, and from Nosferatu then he did a few other books after that, but then was pretty much launched into Spawn, because he's like, check him out, Kevin Keane, illustrator. You'll find him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Phenomenal artist, and he deserves every accolade because he is brilliant. And he did the first 2 issues of Spawn Gunslinger with Todd McFarlane, and he's now doing covers for Spawn Gunslinger, King Spawn. Like, it's just
wow, that's high praise. Yeah, that's I haven't read a Spawn comic since I was young, but I have seen a couple of the recent, and just by happenstance, I didn't know that there was anyone, you know, Irish attached to this, but I have seen some covers for Spawn Gunslinger, and I've thought and I looked at it and gone, that is actually a pretty cool Spawn design, you know. So this is awesome.
I know, like, I mean, if everything was right with the world, Kevin would be working on Batman. That's what he'd be working on, because his Batman work is just fucking phenomenal.
Well, at the pace he's going, the sky's the limit. We will be obviously reaching out and getting any of your socials and any of your, like, where people can find your details, and we'll be putting them in the description below. But if you could also pass on the descriptions there of what you just put out to us there, where you can find his work, we'll certainly include those.
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, let's kick this one off, shall we? So if you have read the title of the show or the thumbnail, you have a fair idea what we're going to talk about this week. So this week's topic was inspired by a movie that only Wayne has seen, but we get the idea. Essentially, it is inspired by a kind of a one of the many themes that is kind of underlined in the new Matrix film, Matrix Resurrection. Did I get it right this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Resurrections. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've been calling it revolutions, revolutionary, and any other rev.
That was the third one. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And actually, maybe you're a big Matrix guy. We watched the 3 matrices, whatever, over the past couple of weeks, and I had a kind of a revelation. I always thought the third one was the worst one. But after rewatching them, I think the third one is like a little bit better than the second one. Now with like 20 years of hindsight. What's your own personal opinion on the first 3?
Well, I actually think there's 4 Matrix films. This new one is the 5th one.
The Animatrix.
Because I count the Animatrix as one of the films.
Yeah. Well, let's say live action then, because I think the Animatrix could, like, everybody would have a different take on that, I'd imagine.
Sure, because it is kind of an anthology of different things. But see, here's the thing, and this is where I'm completely biased. I am a complete Matrix mark. I loved all 3 of those films for multiple different reasons, because I fully bought into that at the time. I was like, when the Matrix first landed, I was like, and then the second one came along, I was like, yeah. Third one came along, I was like, yeah. Now I understand completely why people don't like them.
Sure.
I 100% get that. But I was in for the whole. I was buckled in, ready, just injected into my. I was Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. I'll just sit there like this and just watch.
But you did it to yourself. You were that weirdo that brought in all that equipment into the cinema anyway. Nobody asked you to do it, right?
Full on. No, happy to do it, like, because I just fully bought into the Matrix at the time, and it was just amazing because it was. So I was a big anime person. I still am, and anime and manga and the influence of that world and Blade Runner and all that type of stuff. It's the amalgamation of all of that in one. And then all the philosophy and the spirituality and all that other stuff. And then add the fact that it was just at the point where the internet was starting to go.
Very culturally,
and it was in everyone's home. Yeah. You know, and we all wanted those phones that they had, and you know, we all wanted to have those big slidey Nokia phones, or the ones that they had in the second one that you can buy on eBay now for like $300 and they don't even fucking work. You know, it's So So I'm biased on the original.
Given you're biased, I'm going to assume, like any sane human being, the first one is your favorite of the 3. Yes. Okay. That's established. If you had have said no, that's the way the whole podcast would have been derailed, and we would have had to change the topic.
Flip the table.
Good luck. But second and third one, then, is it like 1, 2, 3? Is it 1, 3, 2?
Yeah.
It is 1, 2, 3.
It's 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, like, and Shane, I think you're on my side here, where like we kind of came to that same realization. I think the third one has more to offer on a rewatch now, but at the time I hated it. I hated it when the first came out.
Yeah. I wasn't too gone on the Matrix sequels myself.
Yeah.
I did buy into the first one quite a bit.
First one's
And
amazing.
then I watched,
it's like one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah, and then when I watched the sequels, I think the sequels I slept on for a while and didn't watch them like straight away. And then I watched them and I was like, ooh, the bang of like, we want more money off of these movies, you know?
I think it was more so for me, it was like they kind of lost sight of what was really interesting about the first one. And it was like, as I said last week, it was kind of like the path of Neo becoming who he was kind of the most interesting thing. And the technology and, you know, the concept of the Matrix. And then the second and third one really became about action, and kind of weird ways to justify it, you know. Anyway, the point, I swear to God, ladies and gentlemen, there is a point here, that Wayne has seen the fourth one, and in this fourth film, without giving away any spoilers, because even I haven't seen it, so I don't know. And I'll let Wayne explain it in better detail.
Can I preface this by saying I thought the fourth one was fucking garbage?
Okay.
I will say that. Right?
I think that's a general cause, yeah.
I did not buy into the fourth one. I guess the idea behind the fourth one. It's just a really shit idea. And ironically, it's also a kind of a middle finger from Lana Wachowski to the studios to say it's kind of like, you made me make 2 more fucking movies when everything was in the first one.
Yeah.
So as much as I bought into the trilogy as it was, this kind of is kind of like there's it tries to be very meta. And personally, I think Wes Craven made the perfect meta film with the Freddy, the final Nightmare film where Freddy comes out of the movie. That's the best meta film ever made.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But this tried to be too smart for its own good, and everyone was just in it for the paycheck. Directors and writers and everyone included. Yeah, that's. I just wanted to say that I thought that the new Matrix film was shite.
Get that out there, because people were getting their pickets ready. They were going to come out there and they were going to boycott by the droves. But the reason we're talking about the Matrix here, folks, is that to our understanding, and Wayne can give us his background as to why we picked this topic. To my understanding, in this new Matrix film, there is, without any spoilers, the kind of topic of the legitimacy of video games is kind of brought up. There is people who are in video game creation roles, and can these be taken seriously if there's not somebody tied to it? There's a lot of stuff happening in this film that kind of touches off that, and it got Wayne thinking. And Wayne, you can obviously tell us now, this might be a good topic.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, gaming has always been a legitimate thing. It's always been a thing that I've had throughout my life from a very early age. But I felt that there is a part of society that looks on gaming as kind of juvenile in a way. That thinks it's a juvenile thing, that only people that have a certain mentality play video games.
Yeah.
And in the Matrix Resurrections, there's a thing that happens where you get to see a game development company, and there's only like Thomas Anderson, Neo's character, is the stoic individual in this gaming company, but everyone else around him in this gaming company is a fucking buffoon and is sexist, derogatory towards everything, like just idiots.
Sure.
And it's kind of, I think they're kind of mocking part of the Hollywood culture as well.
Yeah.
But it's mainly, it's a game company, so if you're like, there's not many layers to this. It's basically, this is what the decision makers in a gaming company is. There's a money person right at the top who's portrayed by Jonathan Groff, and he's up there and he's the money person. He's just all about the money. And then everyone below that is like really fucking juvenile, like all the stereotypical neckbeards.
Sure.
That would live in cliche land if video games were in cliche land. And it just didn't sit well with me, because I know people in video game development. I know people that work in video games. And yeah, not everyone is fucking Aristotle, but not everyone's an idiot either. No. They're not like, they're smart people. And also, video games is a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Absolutely.
So it just felt that part of the film was kind of shitting on it slightly and making it seem like that world is juvenile in some way.
Yes, and I
think it couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah. I think it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, and that's what we want to expand upon, is there has always been, of course, that idea that this is a medium. And it is juvenile in the sense of it's only been around, so many years in comparison to other forms of media such as TV, film, literature, whatever. But like we are kind of at that apex moment, I believe, where like we passed it long ago, in fact. Where I think it can be in that same breath. But before we dive into all of that was the reasoning as to why we picked that topic. Before we dive into all of that, I think we would be remiss as a gaming podcast. I think we would actually be breaking the law if we didn't talk about the biggest news in video games probably of 2022 already, which is Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard for close to 70 billion. And I think it's funny that we're talking about legitimacy in the video game space against other medias when we're literally just after hearing about the biggest media acquisition of all time by a huge margin happening within the video game space. But again, this comes on the back of, what is it now, Shane? We've been, like, back when we used to do the news topics, like, were we just talking about Bobby Kotick's antics like every week for about, I don't know, like a year and a half? Like it was ridiculous.
We were, yeah. It was like, it wasn't even, it was a case of like we talked about it once and then every now and again it's like, hey, did you hear Activision's at it again? And you're like, oh, what did it do? Oh, they're dicks. Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like Activision.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were talking about it a lot, and like, I don't know, man, there's lots of news around this. Number one, it came out of nowhere. That was just like, it was like one of these, like they shadow drop a game or something. It was like, shadow drop, biggest, media conglomerate purchase in history.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly.
Wait, what? Wait, there's not even a hint or a sniff of this, that this was going to happen? Like,
and apparently they've been talking about it for a long time. Apparently, like, Phil Spencer and Bobby Kotick have been sidebarring about this for a long time, but I would assume all of the recent, like, issues, from the workforce, from the government's interaction, from like I would assume that every single shareholder went, wait a second, they're willing to give us how much? Yeah, sell.
Oh yeah.
Before this like shit, goes any further, let's get our money and get out of here. And from what I understand, because of this acquisition, and again, 70 billion, like, put that in perspective. They bought not just Bethesda, but all of ZeniMax Media towards the middle of last year for 7 billion. That is like 1/10. And now I know we're talking about the Call of Duty guys here and Candy Crush and all the rest, but 70, like 10 times, that's crazy. But how much did Disney pay for Marvel? Was that like 4 billion, or it was something stupidly small?
Yeah, I literally came across a thing on Facebook earlier on from GameSpot, IGN, one of those websites, that had like a little infograph up of like, here's all the most recent kind of big media deals of the last 10 years. And it was like, Disney buys Lucasfilm for 4 billion. They
Something
buy
like that,
Marvel for like 6 billion. And right at the top then was Microsoft Activision for 68 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was nuts.
Absolutely. And isn't it, like, it's bizarre when you think about it too, because like, it's Call of Duty is the cash cow there, I think, even though it's waning. But imagine that got like a chance, like,
hey, I'm right here.
What do you mean you're right here? Are you Call of Duty?
Waning.
Oh, the penny dropped. Okay.
That joke was too meta for us to even get. See, we're back to the Matrix again.
Yeah, we are still plugged in. In fact, I'm wearing my my Matrix jumper. But the, like, you've got Call of Duty, and they can probably do a lot to revamp that. And if that then becomes, Microsoft exclusive after the cross-platform deals are all dried up, then, could be cool. But like, you've got your Crash Bandicoots. Like, the first game I ever played on a PlayStation console is now an Xbox, tool, essentially.
Yeah.
You have your Spyros, you have your Guitar Heroes. I hear they're talking about, or Bobby Kotick was saying, he's excited that Guitar Hero might come back because Microsoft is now involved, because he was saying, this is only literally coming out today as of this recording, but he's been saying, I really wanted to do it, but yeah, we couldn't justify the resources for hardware manufacture or whatever, but like, Microsoft, they got this, but to be fair, he's probably full of shit, but to be fair, he has a point. Microsoft manufactures shit all day long. You know, so
They do.
This is
They
true.
do.
we could see Guitar Hero coming back, and that would be enough for me. That's 70 billion worth right there.
It's really weird. I was up in my attic earlier on today looking for a cable from my original Xbox, because I bought some classic Xbox games that don't work on the fucking 360 or the One, because they're not on the compatibility list. So I needed to go find my AV cable, and I went up and I opened up my box of cables, and there, sitting right there, was my Flying V for Rock Band, and it was like, fuck, okay. And now you're mentioning that Bobby Kotick's own. It's coming back, guys. It's coming back. Because I'm like, come on, 68 billion for all these fucking games, and you're excited about Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Now, that being said, when me and my mates used to play that game, we used to go full drum kit, guitars, fucking full on. Like, there's pictures of us at house parties, and everyone's over there having a good time. We're like,
yeah.
like,
me and Shane have done the same things. Yep.
Oh yeah, we've been there. Yeah, we've definitely been there.
Yeah.
Yep. We used to get creative with it as well. Like, you know, if you had to down a can at the house party, you had to do so whilst playing Dragon Force at full speed, and somebody's holding it. Like, we did mad stuff.
I think the worst thing that ever happened to me on Rock Band was we were doing, I think it was Africa by Toto. And I hit the high note and somebody punched me in the balls from behind. And
you hit the high note then.
The planes in Africa were fucking drenched at that point. It wasn't good. But no, I just think it's really funny because people are focusing on certain games in this acquisition, but it's not. It's completely done what I think Blizzard and Activision wanted it to do. Initially, it was a case of straight away people were like, I hope Microsoft sort these people out and clean up everyone's act. Yep. And now it's all yeah, and that's literally, that was the first day of it. The second day of it is, what games are going to be Xbox exclusives? But they came out and said nothing is right now.
Right now,
they don't think. They don't think anything is.
Here's the thing, and and this is what I assumed would happen. Is I don't think there has been official statements. It's because it's so murky because they have so many properties that they'll have to like define each one as they go. Because it'll be like, do you remember they got Bethesda? Now Bethesda has Arcane underneath it, and Arcane had Deathloop coming out, and Deathloop should have been realistically a Microsoft exclusive, but they'd already signed a deal to have that on Sony. So, you know, it's a case of we will honor our contracts. You know, we're not going to suddenly cut Sony off at the knees here. But, you know, Phil Spencer then later came out and said, you know, yes, the next Elder Scrolls will be Xbox exclusive, even though everybody said, oh, they'd be throwing money away if they did that. And he went, no, we threw money away to buy them. It would be throwing money away to not make it exclusive at that point. You know? And he's like, he's right. Yeah. He's right. You know, and they want to get away from hardware sales as well. Like, Microsoft has no interest in making Xboxes anymore. They will keep making them as long as we need them. But they are introducing more and more ways to play these games online, to play them on your phone, to play them on your TV, from what I understand is coming this year or the year after. And if you can just have Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Fallout, Halo, Forza Motorsport, whatever it is, you name a game, you can pretty much have it for $15 a month on your TV and never have to buy anything with a controller. Like, they win. That's the end of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I know myself, I'm a collector of games. I like to have the physical game. But when I got my Xbox One, and it was only recently, I was a Sony guy for a very long time. I got my Xbox One and I got Game Pass with it. I got a free Game Pass with it.
Yes.
For like 2 months.
Me too.
Right? Signed into it. Looked at it, was like, okay, what's this? It's probably going to be like PlayStation Now. They've got a bit of games that are on it that I've already played. I think I signed in and there was a day one release of a brand new game that only just landed and it was in Game Pass.
Yes.
Like, the fuck? And then since then, I'm like, the amount of games that I've gotten day one where all my buddies are playing it on PC or PlayStation and they're paying for it 60 blips ago, but it's there for me day one after paying $12.99 a month or whatever it is. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like Back 4 Blood, for example. Back 4 Blood. Big Left 4 Dead fans, me and all my buddies, big Left 4 Dead fans. Back 4 Blood was announced. I saw that it was available on the PC day one on Game Pass. Yeah. Sorted. They all went out and paid full price for it on the PlayStation, on the PC, and the Xbox. Yep. But I had it. I didn't have to worry about it. And I know you guys had talked about gaming as a subscription service previously on another episode. And it's a big market, but I think Xbox are now going to start, like Microsoft are on their way to it. Because for the longest time, Sony had it wrapped up with their Spider-Mans, their Last of Us, the God of War, all of those exclusives that are Sony games that everyone's like, these are Sony staples.
Yep.
Yes. Like Ghost of Tsushima did them so well for the last while, and now it's on PC. But it's like, yeah, like Sony have those games, but now Microsoft have Bethesda and like Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Like that's the funny thing, you see, and like Game Pass was a phenomenal value proposition when it began, when it was just like Halo and Gears of War and Forza, plus the third-party releases that we'll add to this for you, and you have like 100 or more games at that point. It's gone up to about 200 or so per month, and even having said that, all of those so here's the thing: if I had an Xbox and if I talked to somebody who had a PlayStation, they'd go, man, I'd never buy an Xbox. It's all about the exclusives, man. It's all about the exclusives. I can play those third-party games on my PlayStation. Why would I bother getting an Xbox? Not anymore, you can't, because Microsoft has turned all the third-party studios pretty much into a first-party studio. And it's a great idea. You know, if you've got the money, do it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Game Pass, to your point, Wayne, like now that they have Activision and Blizzard and all the subsidiaries under their belt, you know the way all of their first-party studios games are on Game Pass? That's going to like add probably 50 games right there, like without thinking about it.
When they bought Bethesda, like that's what I logged on this morning, because 2 days after they bought Bethesda, all the Bethesda games were on Game Pass.
It's their property now. You know?
Yeah, like
it's crazy.
So it was a case of like I remember it was announced, and 2 days later I booted up my Xbox, and you know you go in and they show you what's new.
Yeah,
it was like boom, 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 boom. Like all the fucking Doom games, Fallout games, they were all there. I was like, holy shit, this is unreal. And the fact that you can play it on your PC as well,
yes,
because I have a really good gaming PC, and I have my Xbox One is fine. I didn't get the new Xbox, but I have an Xbox One, the Cyberpunk one.
Yeah,
that one looks gorgeous. And my really nice gaming PC, I'm playing games on this because I have the Game Pass. And it's an unreal deal. So to have, when they acquisitioned that, when they got Activision and Blizzard, and I saw the news, I was like, my mind just started to kind of flip to think what games I'm going to be playing on my PC. Because let me put it this way: I dialed out of World of Warcraft a long time ago. Okay,
I never dialed in.
I paid my dues. Okay.
Yeah.
I did my time. Back when it first started, I got into the Burning Crusade. I got into wherever the one with the pandas was, whatever that one was. But
Mists of Pandaria. I'll never forget that poster in GameStop.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I did that. But now that it's going to be potentially coming to the system, as I know it's a subscription service, but how are they going to handle that? Like, it's now they've got these subscription service built in with Game Pass.
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
There's so many questions.
Yeah,
they
do that as well. Game Pass does do, like, you know, subscriptions to Disney Plus are included. There's like they are not afraid to get into that type of stuff. So you can 100% expect to see that coming. But with that all being said, we are 30 minutes in and we haven't talked about the topic yet. And I know people at home are just scratching, clawing at their earphones, waiting to get into this. So let's do them a favor and let's get into it. But before we do that, let's take a very quick break where we're going to remind you about our socials, and then we're going to come straight back into it. So do not go away, stay tuned, but please, lads, for the love of God, play that thing! Hey there! If you want to keep up with all things casual game content, you can do so in a number of ways. The easiest way to do so is to follow us on all of our socials at Casual Game Co. Not content, because you only get 15 characters, but hey, what can you do? At Casual Game Co. That's at CASUALGAMECO. Can't be any simpler than that. On Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. And when you're at Facebook, look for the group, the Casual Game Community. It's a good bunch. We're going to love you. Come on by. If you could do us a massive favor, like the podcast, review the podcast, and just tell a friend about the podcast. It goes a long way, and you can find all of our content on podcast forums wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Casual Game Cast. Thanks again for all of your help and all of your support. It means the absolute world to us. Now, back to the show. And we are back. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get into the Please Lord Play That Thing.
It's the topic of the show,
where we are going to be discussing video games. Are they a culturally legitimate medium? And what exactly do we mean by that? Again, we mean if you take, for example, movies and TV, if you take literature, if you take any other form of media, it has been legitimized. It has been, culturally accepted. And what I mean by that is I read books and watch TV shows. My grandmother, she reads books and watches TV shows. My youngest cousins, they all do it, and nobody questions it because it is culturally legitimate. Now, video games. Video games often had a bad rap, of course, of being juvenile, of not having that cachet, of not having almost proved itself yet to be legitimized in the same way. I know myself, having been a lifelong gamer, as you can tell, as somebody that talks about games every week, it is something that has been important to me as I've grown up. But I have always been met with that challenge of like, I don't want necessarily people to see me on the train doing this, it's a bit embarrassing, or like, somebody that I might be meeting for the first time finding out that I'm into video games, that can sometimes be an awkward conversation. It's these legitimizing moments. Does video games, or has video games is a better way of putting it, has it gotten to that apex point where it is now culturally legitimate? So this is our discussion, and Shane, I'm going to start with you. As my fellow cohort in this video game podcast, Wayne, I know you're not familiar with podcasts, it's okay, we'll catch you up. But as my fellow cohort on this particular podcast, what do you feel in this realm? Because obviously we are putting stuff out there that's video game related. I'm very interested to hear what your take on this is.
So my heart wants to say yes. They are culturally legitimate or whatever. My brain says we are almost there.
Okay.
We're there for the most part, but we still have some, legacy issues or some holdouts to the cause, as it were, or whatever. So, like, I think that, like, I mean, we've reached an age where your granny can see a picture of Mario and know it's Mario.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Which means hands down, video games has a cultural impact. Because if your granny, who I don't know was hiding in a bomb shelter during the bombs or whatever, can know what.
Do you know my granny?
I have no idea. No, never met the woman. But like, if she can recognize a mad little Italian plumber that jumps around on like plants and goes down pipes and eats a lot of mushrooms or whatever, then like where's the argument here? You know what I mean? We've made it. Everyone knows what video games are. But I know that's the very base surface level stuff. There is a deeper thing here. And I think yes, and I think because video games are relatively young compared to literature and film, and even film's relatively young compared to literature, we're finally reaching the peak. We're reaching the point where like all of us here, when we're granddad sitting in the nursing home, are probably going to be playing like PlayStation 45 or Xbox Game Pass 2 or whatever it is that they have released. You know what I mean?
They've only released 2 in the time that it takes for me to get into a retirement home. That's a scary prospect. But
but you know what I mean? Like we've already reached that point now where all the people like us who grew up with games, who are now in their 30s, 40s, and there's some older than us who grew up with games as well, who were like the diehards there from the first inception of Pong or whatever. Like we are going to be in that nursery.
You're calling Wayne out here, man.
Sorry, but we are going to be those people that are like whatever. Like I don't mean to generalize here, but like old folks sitting around the old folks' home now playing gin or bridge, whatever it is they play. Like we're all going to be sitting around playing like Call of Duty Infinite Space on Mars Kill Elon Musk Warfare 3 or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's yes. Of course where that series is going to. Yes.
That's definitely where it's going.
I agree.
So like I think in that sense we will get to where literature and things are, where we will get to a point where we have a population who has never not played video games or has never not experienced them in some way, shape, or form. And then we will be fully legitimate as in the same way movies and film are.
Yeah, so that's like a counter question then on that. And I 100% get where you're going. Are you saying there's a legitimacy bar that has to be kind of crossed in order for it to be considered legitimate? So like we've if you can imagine, like, can you imagine a really cheesy 80s kids movie where they have to raise $10,000 in order to save the farm or whatever, and they have like one of those charts that they're filling up with red as they go from the bottom up to the top? Are you saying that we're like, $70,000 or whatever, we're like 30 off, yes, and we just need to cross that? Because like it sounds like you're kind of saying, yes, there is many instances and examples of legitimacy here, but just not quite enough. Is that kind of what you're going?
Yeah, I think where, like you said, the red thermometer is almost there. Like there's still, I suppose maybe it's slightly different because like I still work for the time being in the retailer that shall not be named on this. But well, actually, we've named it.
We've named it a couple of times now. So.
We've named it a couple of times. I work for GameStop. I won't be working there much longer, but I work for GameStop, and like I deal with the public with gaming all day, every day. And I still, now part of this is the fact that we're Irish and we live in Ireland, but I still have those parents coming in who are like, I need to get a tenner V-Bucks, and they're like, God, I hate computer games. Computer games are awful. They should have never invented them. Why would anyone play computer games? Give me 5 to 100 euros worth of V-Bucks or my son is going to strangle the cat. This kind of thing. And
sounds like that parent has other problems, but okay, yeah.
True, yes, I know. Like, look, Fortnite can turn them into little monsters. But anyway, that's besides the point. You're still dealing with those people, who would happily sit down and watch 9,000 hours of Coronation Street, but video games are awful. Why would anyone play a video game? They're for stupid things for children.
Yeah, but that's almost like an eye of the beholder type thing at that point then as well, isn't it? Where it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's a complex thing. It's a complex.
Yeah, to me it bangs of like, they were raised with TV and books and whatever in school, and their granny or their mother used to watch a bit of soaps, so they watch a bit of soaps or whatever. Because they've never experienced or bothered to take the time to take an interest in video games or what their kids are doing with video games, they're just like, no, that's that stupid thing over there that nobody needs to. Why would you bother with that? Sure, like it's only little fellas running around, jumping around the place. What's the point? And that's one of the little things I find that's keeping us just slightly below full legitimization or full cultural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you understand where I'm coming from, without
100%.
Someone hopefully taking me up too wrong. But that's where I'm going when I say we're almost there. We just need that section of the population to get old enough to die off, and then we'll be laughing.
Sure, I get you. And if we were having a 2-man debate, I would 100% gone, okay, now my counterpoints. But this is not the platform we have. So it is a very well put point you have there, and I want to hear now, before lambasting everyone with my little rant. Wayne, what about you, my man? Like, and you're an interesting point of view here as well, because you've been soaking in popular culture and giving your takes on it for, as we mentioned, at least 12 years. So from your perspective,
I'm like the jab of the Hutt of Irish pop culture. That's I get it. Like I know what you're saying, but I mean, I've been around a long time, and I've also been playing video games since they were a thing.
Yeah,
I had the Sinclair, I had a knockoff Atari. Here, this is top. It's not. I'm not trying to tangential in this thing, but if you've listened to my podcast that I'm on with my buddies, that's what we do. We go off on tangents. But
absolutely,
my first gaming console that I got was a knockoff Atari system, and this is how shameful it was in our household. My dad had to go to Belfast to buy it because he got it on. I got it on a deal.
Yep.
And because he bought it in Belfast, it was emblazoned with a Union Jack. And this was Ireland in the very early 80s. And he brought it down, and he says, under no circumstances has anyone outside this house to see that gaming console. You have to play it by yourself in the corner. But that was Pong. It had Pong on it. That was it. Yeah. Pong, and then it had a racing game that was just dots going around in a circle. Yeah. So I've played video games all of my life.
Of course.
And I have struggled with the idea of people outside of my circle of friends who also play video games. people looking at them with a sense of, ooh, you know, really?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
play
yeah, yeah.
video games? You know, I've worked in gaming stores. I've worked in gaming development. I've worked in game creation as well at some point in my varied career of life. And I see the amount of work that goes into these things to make them.
Herculean, yeah.
And yeah, unbelievable. And we've seen the stories over the last 5 to 10 years of the time people have to burn to make these things. And I totally agree with what Shane was saying with the fact that it's like we're not there just yet, but we're just about to be. I honestly think this Microsoft deal is going to legitimize gaming in the eyes of some people that would not have given it the time of day before.
Yeah.
Because money is mentioned. Because $68 billion is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So you're kind of going, gaming costs that much. There's also another thing I think has legitimized gaming across the board for a lot of people that would kind of go, but it's just you're just sitting in a dark room playing things. Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Twitch has legitimized gaming severely because people are making so much money
Yeah.
just playing games and having people watch them play games. So I think gaming as a creation process is very much legitimate in my mind. People that make the games, people that invest their time and their sweat and their tears into the games, that is legit stuff. Big time.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And the time and years I've poured into playing these games, in my mind, they are literally the finest form of storytelling, media. Like they surpass, and I'm a huge cinephile. Video games now surpass film because you can only get films in short bites of time, whereas you can spend, like, I mean, how many times has they re-released Skyrim for God's sakes? And how many times has everyone bought that game? How does that not legitimize it even financially as a source of entertainment? I think also part of the part and parcel with the whole thing, and because I don't want to repeat what Shane says, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, so I don't want to repeat what he said, but I think also another thing tying it in with films that is a hard time legitimizing video games is that it's extremely hard to adapt a video game into a movie format.
Yeah.
So that is also, there's always that mocking sensation on top of it when a video game that people hold dear is taken and Hollywood takes it and we're going to make more money out of this.
Yeah.
And they're going to try and make something else with it and make it into a bite-sized format that you would have poured 60 to 80 hours into on a day-in, day-out basis is squeezed down to 2.5 hours. Of course you're not going to get the same result. And of course it's not going to have the same emotional impact. So I think that also when people are lambasting, video game adaptions, although over the last couple of years we're very lucky to have the likes of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which is just ridiculous amount of fun.
Yeah.
And then it also turns back on itself where you've got a lot of video games that end up being just like very movie-like in their thing. So some of those games can kind of tie in. But yeah, I think it's a case of with video games as a whole, as a form of entertainment, there's always going to be that sneering few that are going to look upon it as being something that's lesser than. It's not something that they can invest their time or want to invest their time in. And yet, there's people that will just invest nothing but that time in. And there's people that make careers out of just playing video games, as I said, Twitch, and streaming on YouTube and all that type of stuff. You have the legitimization of actors in video games. People that have started off as actors in video games that have made careers out of themselves and are now well-known faces across the board. And I know people harp on about this a lot, but if you take the idea of what Critical Role is, everyone in Critical Role is a voice actor that did work in video games. And they're now a multi-million-dollar franchise. They're now starting their own thing that they did with Dungeons & Dragons, but they started out as voice actors in video games.
Yeah.
And they continue to do that. So there's offshoots of what the video game industry is that is hell legitimate. But the actual industry itself, if you're a gamer, you're seen as being lesser than. You're seen as being something that's like, you just spend your hours in a dark room playing with a joystick. But the technology behind it all, there's also something that needs to be understood and revered, because this whole thing with VR, over the next couple of years, VR is just going to go whoop.
Yeah.
Because the first couple of attempts into VR, into gaming, it was a bumpy road. But the technology has gotten better and better and better. When you see articles about the fact that people can't get PS5s because the demand is so high and the money that people are pumping into these things, yet you still have people looking down on it as some form of entertainment. It's weird. It's a weird paradox in my mind as video games. The original point of the Matrix Resurrections, the characters in that film that represent what a gaming company is, they're sneering caricatures of facsimiles. Now, granted, they're meant to be programs existing within the Matrix, and fine. So that's what a computer's idea, ironically, of what a video game developer would be.
Sure, yeah.
Or a program, you know.
In fact, did you
play
the Unreal Engine demo that came out?
Yeah.
With
which is
Neo?
And so weird, yeah.
And it's very meta in the sense they say, "Oh no, we just have to do this for the marketing team or whatever it is." Yeah.
But I mean, that's the juxtaposition of that, where you have something that's in the film that this was made to promote. Even in the Unreal Engine thing, it's not the version of Trinity and Neo you're seeing in the film. It's the version you saw in the original movies.
Yes,
that's promoting this. It's the look of the original movies that they're replicating in the Unreal Engine, and that was used to promote a film that in that movie, when they talk about video games, they're kind of talking down at it.
Yeah,
and the idea of what it is, they're talking down at it. And that seems to be a form of entertainment that everyone talks down towards, until they see the numbers of the cash that's involved.
Absolutely.
How much people make when they're streaming their games. How Microsoft paid for Activision and Blizzard.
Yeah, that's going to grab a lot of eyes. Like that headline is going to grab a lot of eyes on a financial and fiscal level, where people are going to start investing a lot more money into that hadn't already been doing it, to go it's like crypto, it's like NFTs, it's like any of these types of things. You make enough money, people will jump on the bandwagon, and that's going to happen there. And to your point, I think and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off if I have.
Oh, no.
But I think what you're saying is kind of true, in the sense that some people have, and probably always will, look down on it to a degree. But the difference with video games, and it's probably one of its strengths for those of us who do play them, but the difference with video games is that with written media, there is something for everyone. Every single person, whether it's somebody who's into literature, whether it's somebody who reads the paper, whether it's somebody that reads OK Magazine, there's something written on a page somewhere for you that you enjoy. And that doesn't matter who you are. You could be a farmer out in the back end of Skibbereen. You could be the most tech-savvy dude, and you could just be a 4-year-old. There's something for you. And the same goes for TV, the same goes for movies. Everybody has something that they will watch and they will take in and they will enjoy. If I got that same farmer in Skibbereen and put Mario in front of me, tell me, go away. They wouldn't give it a chance, you see. And I think that's the big stumbling thing here, is the interactivity of video games, where there's it's like Darrell O'Brien said it beautifully years ago. You can't watch a movie badly, you can't read a book badly. You can be very bad at a video game though, and it's a skill. Playing video games is a skill. Even the most simple of video games, you have to wrap your head around, I'm moving things in a kind of a virtual space with my interaction with some kind of physical object. It's something you do have to wrap your head around. And it's like that first time you try to explain to somebody how to use analog sticks. It's that same thing, Yeah. And I think that's the biggest blocker where we as an industry have to face, is that anyone can watch a TV show, but not everyone has the want or the will to learn how to play a video game. And I think that kind of ties into what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
The funny thing... Oh, go on, Shane, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one thing that I think helps with that, which actually does tie back into Activision Blizzard as well, is the redheaded stepchild of the gaming industry, mobile games.
Yes, big time.
Like your Candy Crush. What do you have to do? Only tap 3 colours.
Yep, that has opened up a lot of doors,
Yeah, and say what you will about mobile games or whatever, or Candy Crush or whatever, it is a video game.
Oh, yeah.
It is a game in video format that, I know for a fact my mother plays.
I have used that in arguments in the past with family members and stuff that go do you still play them video games? And I turn around and go, do you still play Candy Crush?
Yeah,
Like, I suppose.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting those as people that way, but then there is still that big gap in people's like connecting the two of going, I play Candy Crush, but Candy Crush is not like that. Candy Crush.
Candy Crush.
I play Candy Crush, but that's not like that game where you pick up a gun and shoot those guys or anything. Like this is a totally different. This is not a video game like you do in the dark basement. You know.
So like this is kind of like if you'll indulge me, this is kind of where I'd like to kind of use my launch pad into what I was going to bring up. Because
Well, I just want to make one quick point.
Please,
One
please
quick
do.
point is
Please.
to say this. Sorry, but it's like this whole generational thing is that when I was, like, God knows, I was in my teens anyway, and I had a Mega Drive. And we used to go rent the Mega Drive games down in Activision, which would be like, for people that aren't initiated, is where I used to go rent VHS tapes and DVDs and video games.
Rental store,
before they
yeah.
got rid of that shit. Rental store.
Yeah.
And I was renting games, and Jungle Strike came out for the Mega Drive by Electronic Arts. Back when Electronic Arts were just Electronic Arts, they didn't own and destroy gaming franchises. And I rented Jungle Strike, and my dad saw it.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is now in his nearly 70. Right, and I'd rented what was it? It was Roller Coaster Tycoon, or the version of it, Sim Tycoon, whatever the fuck it was. It was a roller coaster game,
was it? Or,
of a fun park, and then Jungle Strike.
Mm-hmm.
And I put on the simulation game first to see what it was like, and he was just slagging it off, going, "Jeez, what the fuck is this?"
Yeah.
And then I put on Jungle Strike, and he just sat there staring at me play this game, and he's like, "Can I give that a go?" And I handed him the Mega Drive controller, and I didn't see it for the rest of the day. My dad sat there and played Jungle Strike for hours, and he just kept giving me money to go rent the game so he could play it, and he just fell in love with it. And it's a weird situation. It was the only game my dad ever gravitated towards. Now, at the time, my dad would have been, like, I'm 44 now. And I would have been, say, about 14. So you're talking at least 30 years ago. So my dad would have been the age I am now when this happened. And that blows my mind that even at that age, he didn't understand it, but he was 40 odd. And he saw Jungle Strike and was like, gives a go at it. But he never got it. He never got into video games after that. He never got into anything else. It was just Jungle Strike.
It's that
he gave me a lot of money.
Point he found something that spoke to him.
Yeah. So, and like Shane was saying, there is a moment. There is going to be a moment where a generation is going to die off, and then there's going to be like the oldest people. It's more than likely going to be people like me. They're going to be of an age where they are the generation that were around when video games arrived. Yeah, and it's a normal thing for them. And it's gonna be something like that. It's gonna be like they're gonna be of an age, and it's gonna be just accepted that video games are a thing. Yeah, and they're part of culture, and we're just gonna have to fucking move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the next thing that we're not gonna like, whatever that may be.
It's like it's like being a parent and hating your children's music, and then coming into your 30s and realizing I have become everything I hate because I hate the children's music. It's just whatever's new is frightening.
I'm scared. I'm scared the fact that Nirvana are on the classic rock Spotify playlists. You know what I mean? Yeah. That scares the shit out of me. So
and that's what it is. It's the ticking of the clock. But like, and that's funny that you talk about your dad. And I loved. I think did you say on last week's podcast that was like one of the first video games you owned because he was so enamored by it that he almost like demanded you go down and pay for it with his money. I think I did talk about him because we did, like, he kept giving me money to rent it, and we'd rented it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and me and my buddy Mike had already beaten it. We were bored with it. We moved on to the next game. Desert Strike again.
And he's like, how much is it to buy? And back then Mega Drive games were like 60 quid. Like, they were still that was the general price of what games are.
No joke.
Always has been. Yeah, and he was like, how much is it to buy? And he says, well, Dad, you've spent the amount of money that it is to buy it like 4 times over. Yeah, and you still haven't fucking beaten it. Like, you know, you're not, it's 60 quid to buy. He says, well, just go fucking buy it for me then. So I bought him a copy of Jungle Strike, and he played that.
Amazing.
And that was his game, but nothing. I remember we got Urban Strike, which was the one after that, and it wasn't the same. This wasn't the same.
No.
That was his Matrix Reloaded.
Full circle,
To
ladies
bring
and
it
gentlemen.
back.
If you had that on your
Yeah.
bingo card, put it down. But yeah, it's that thing, and back to my analogy of the farmer and the sticks of Skibbereen. Like, if you found the thing, like if you could just get into his psyche, like Psychonaut style, and just figure out what it is that would, just connect with that guy. And put that game in front of him and just play it in front of him until he gets that gestation point, like your dad, to go like, give us a go at that.
Probably Farming Simulator.
Possibly, like, honest to God.
Couldn't help myself, sorry.
Fucking goat simulator. That's what you want.
There you go. That's where it is. But like, honestly, that's what it takes. You see, it's just crossing that border of, oh, I get it now. But like what I was going to say earlier is, so as you know, Shane, I like to debate. And when yourself and Wayne were kind of saying like we're almost there, like I just had that other side of the argument in me, kind of sitting on my hands, going, shut up, let them talk, because I feel very passionate about this, and it's a topic I'm delighted we're talking about, because like if you look at games as a whole, and I'm not just talking video games, I mean just like playing a game as children do. You do it with sticks and stones, you do it with a board game, you do it with video games, you do it with whatever. Like, games go back to like primordial time. Like, when we were apes, when we were closer to apes, we were playing games. And that is something that has been with us since far longer than literature, far longer than TV or movies. Did we have a virtual medium to play them in? No. But we have been playing games, and it's been culturally relevant throughout the entire history of humankind. And in fact, it was, I believe Brenda Romero did a TED talk on this, but that's probably where I'm picking it up from, but I'm not quoting her, so don't take anything verbatim. But, I think one of the points that she had raised there was that, like, even like games, parlor games and stuff like that, like, when you talk about us as human beings playing constructed games that aren't just like kids playing out in the street, like, you're talking about parlor games, and that was like an adult activity. That was something adults did in the quiet room, in the good house, in the manor, or whatever it was. And kids weren't allowed. They were to be seen and not heard. They were to get out of here. And this is adults' time where we entertain ourselves, and this is the act of entertainment. And again, culturally important. Then obviously enough, the 60s come around, and possibly the late 50s, and we get the very first video game of all time, Tennis for Two. And even at that time, nothing had ever been seen before. It still amazes me today that the first video game ever made was a multiplayer game. Like, it was Pong before Pong, if you know the one. But like, people were enamored by it at the first trade shows that was brought around to, and it was just like, oh yeah, give us a go at that. Immediately people got the itch of, oh, give me a go at that. And again, that speaks to like the first time a video game was out, people were crowding around it because it spoke to you. Like, you automatically, primordially went, oh, game. And like,
yeah,
that is an important reaction to take note of. You know what I mean? Like, it is something, I think, that if we're talking legitimacy culturally, the concept of a game, I think, is legitimate. But then you go down into the rabbit hole of, okay, we are talking about specifically in the lens of video games, so you do have to skew your judgment a little bit based on that. But the problem with video games is technology, obviously, increments over time. And you have Ohm's law, of course, like, everything gets twice as powerful every year and so on and so forth. And when you look at the resources we had in the Atari days, when those, let's be honest, shithead developers for the most part were just completely taking the piss, taking coke all over the place, cranking out games, it didn't matter whatsoever. Like, that really took the legitimacy of video games down a couple of pegs for a long time. But the initial thought and the initial Pong and the initial, like, Atari age, like, that was full of some really great ideas and legitimacy, but they just kind of steered it off a cliff a little bit. We obviously get to Nintendo. Nintendo brings Mario in. All of a sudden, that primordial, I get it, you move this way and you jump on things. Like, it kind of reignited that spark, and we kind of started from I would argue we kind of started from zero again there to go like, okay, let's just build this up again. Let's build
Well, I
it
mean,
back up.
I will say that, like, I mean, you had the Sinclair and Commodore age as well
That's
in
true.
the Western world. It was part of that. Like, I mean, that was my kind of birthing into gaming. I mean, the funny thing is, and I don't mean to sidetrack your point in any way, shape, or form, Phil, I really don't.
Oh, you're
but
good, honestly. God.
This entire thing would not be a conversation if we were all Japanese.
No.
True.
This is true. This
You
is
know?
very true.
So, I mean, if we had the same outlook on, it's a weird thing because Western culture is very much there's always a shame level, particularly when we're Irish. There's always a shame thing about everything.
Yes.
So if you're enjoying yourself, shame on you.
How dare you?
Yeah, but in Japan, it's a case of work hard, and because you've worked hard, you get to play hard situation. And the legitimacy of juvenile, and for a better phrase of it, a juvenile undertaking of fun.
Yeah.
Be it whatever the fuck. I mean, Nintendo's been around for a very long fucking time. Like they predated video games. Like the
absolutely.
pachinko games were a thing.
Absolutely.
But like they then dived into because somebody made Ghana Sisters, and then they went, oh, let's make Mario out of that. Like but it's like I think it's a case of there was a Western world ideal that we haven't really gotten over ourselves, because when you hit a certain age of adulthood, you have to be serious.
Yeah.
I think we have managed to there's a generational situation where we've managed to sidestep that, where we are now, there is a culture that started as an underground culture of video gaming, but as soon as internet cafes came into the forefront, it started to build more, and you had LAN parties and you had social gatherings around gaming, where gaming became a social thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
It kind of drove it a bit more, and then conventions came more of a thing. And then as far as the production of the games, once you said like Owen's thing, where the technology potentially gets more and more and more.
Yeah.
The work that gets put into these things needs to up its game, and the production levels and value and cost goes through the roof.
And
It's
team
a
size
weird
as well.
thing.
Like team size is
Yeah.
like, listening to a podcast recently of the guy who programmed Pac-Man on the Atari 2600 did an interview, and I was just listening to him, and this is a one-man project, and he had like a month to do it, and that was it. They just released whatever he did, and that was that. And it sold like gangbusters, and people were horribly disappointed. But the thing is, like, that's a one-person operation, and you look at like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm sure that has about 4,000 employees touching off at some point during its gestation.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
A friend of mine worked on that, and he'll tell you like himself, like the pride that they have in that game.
Yeah.
The pride that they have in the making of that game, because there's so much of them in it. Like from the base game to the DLC. Like I remember, I've a terrible phobia of rats. For anyone that has never listened to a podcast that doesn't know this, I have a horrible phobia of rats.
Sure.
And my buddy Derek was part of the production team of Assassin's Creed, the Paris DLC that came out. It's filled with rats. And he sent me a message apologizing for this, because he knew how much I enjoyed the game. He knew how much I enjoyed the Irish DLC.
Sorry,
for sure.
You're not going to enjoy Paris, man. Sorry.
No, that's it. He was like, I'm really, really sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to be playing the Paris DLC. I'm sorry for you.
So Plague Tale Innocence is not on your radar.
My wife bought me the Dishonor box set.
But you talk to them; they're cute. But look, let's not sidetrack too much more, just because I know obviously we're kind of getting to the hour point. But no, you're 100% right. Like, and also there is a question around nationality. Like different nations have always treated this differently. Japan lives and breeds that release at the end of the day. Be juvenile, for lack of a better word, as you said, Wayne. Play pachinko. Dress up like an anime woman, whatever it is you do. But in here, yes, we do have a lot of repression. But I guess the biggest point I wanted to raise, and I kind of went on a tangent of history there, but so we said it in the green room that, like, let's not go down a massive rabbit hole here of are video games art? And the reason we don't want to go down a massive rabbit hole there is because I think that deserves its own episode, and we will do that in the future, along with an episode that's going to kind of tie into what we were talking about with Activision buying, or sorry, Microsoft buying Activision and what have you. But to touch on it very briefly, like, one of the things that legitimizes literature and TV and movies, which all have examples of schlock, you know, like all of those things, like, you know, you look at OK Magazine, right? That is not literature. However, it is written word, and it's acceptable, you know, to a degree, to be reading that. You know, you look at like just the worst TV shows and movies you've ever seen, they still get kind of in the same pantheon as your Citizen Kanes or whatever. They're still the same medium, and they're still accepted to a degree because they're in that medium, you know.
They're accepted for what they are, though.
Yes,
they're accepted for being schlock.
They are accepted for being schlock, but in a legitimized medium, if you get me.
Sure.
Whereas video games, like even the most pinnacle video games, still get treated and looked at as a video game to some people. However, I would argue it's obviously a case of not everybody in the world knows about these examples. That's kind of part of the issue. But we have 100% crossed the line of legitimizing video games in terms of their content and in terms of what has come out many years ago. Like, you look at examples like of, so what does art generally tend to do? It kind of like has something to say about, you know, specific topics, specific, you know, human emotion, about, you know, just trying to express either something from yourself or of the world around you. And like, you look at games such as, again, Brenda Romero put it very, very succinctly, so I'm just kind of piggybacking off her example here in terms of the games. But the game Papers, Please, you know, like that is legitimately a game about border control and using and playing with the idea of, like, I need to just decide whether this person can cross in here based on like my initial first impression. And sometimes I'm going to be wrong, you know, and sometimes I'm going to be right, but it's going to present me with a lot of issues, and it's not going to slap me over the head with it. It's going to do so in a very constructive and artistic way, you know. And you see something like that, or you see something like This War of Mine, you know, talking about, you know, like raising a child in war times and making those tough decisions, like as a civilian, as to like how I'm going to interact with other civilians around me. Like, these types of things, they're dealing with very, very complex and very, very human problems and emotion and storytelling and all of these things, and they're doing so in a way that even movies and TV find it hard to navigate, which is, I don't have to be reminded about this thing at all times. I can just live in the space, and naturally the point of the artist is washing over me. Whereas, you know, you're watching a TV show or a movie and you kind of have an idea what they're going for, and you're just waiting for those like beats to happen, where it's like, oh, you're gonna say this thing anytime, yep, there it is, and like, oh, they're gonna go and do this thing, oh, there it is. It's sometimes it's easy to point that out in video games, but when you look at the more artistically driven ones, you're just like, wow, that just took me like on a journey. When you really play through something like a video game that has a lot to say and do, when you step away from it, you're kind of changed a little bit. Like, I find I am anyway. Like, I kind of have to sit back and think about some games for like, you know, a week or two. Red Dead Redemption 2, even though it was made by Rockstar and is like a hyper violent game, like, I finished that game and I went like, God almighty, like, there's so much to just to work
unpack
out in my brain after this, you know. But I never got that. I never got that from a TV show or movie. And Shane, actually, to our games of the year of 2020, The Last of Us 2, like, not the biggest fan of the game in particular, but the actual impact it had on me as a human is unbelievable. I had to take time off work, Wayne. Like, I was shook as a human after all of that toil and all of that hardship and all of the dread. And actually, my girlfriend will tell you, she was like, Phil, you were a wreck after playing that. And I was. But the movie never did that to me.
Well, the one game, it was a while ago now, but I had, our Amelia was just on the way, our daughter was just on the way, and I played Firewatch.
Oh, amazing. I only played that myself like a year ago. Yeah.
Fucking gorgeous game.
Unbelievable.
A beautiful game. And the idea of the story of that game, there's a moment in it that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
When you're looking for a certain thing in a cave and you find it. And as a potential parent, when that hit, I literally had to go and have a strong drink. And my wife had to come and go, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
I could hear you in the other room, and it sounded like you were really upset about something. And I explained to her what happened in the game, and she was like, "Oh my god!" It's like, "This is you," because my wife is not a gamer. The only game I could get my wife to play at any point because she liked running people over was Crackdown. And I think that says more about her than it says about gaming. But she really liked running over people in Crackdown.
Sure.
But with Firewatch, when a particular moment happened, I was just like, fuck. And that is the emotional impact because you're so dialed in into a game. I get what you said about Last of Us 2. I'm a huge fan of Naughty Dog storytelling. I adored that game from start to finish. I know it has its detractors. I know some people didn't like the way it went. I get what you're saying about it being an emotional, just fucking slog.
A gut punch, an absolute gut punch. From like, and it just kept punching me in the gut again and again and again.
Yeah,
my girlfriend would be sitting beside me every so often, and she's like, "I have to leave the room, Phil. I can't be around this anymore. It's depressing the shit out of me."
Like you don't get that. But I have friends of mine who play fucking the latest Pokemon game and they get that shit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like it's what you're invested in the game with. It's how you're invested in the game. It's like going back to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I got so invested in that game. I criticized the Irish DLC because the geography is all fucking wrong.
Yes, so I hear. And you know what the thing is, right? I know we are running late here, guys, so we will wrap this up soon. Don't worry. But
this is what happens when you have me on as a guest. It just fucking just tangents.
Hey, I'm not doing anything tomorrow morning. We can keep this going all night long. But the I don't know who would be listening. But the like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we have a buddy here that we've interviewed in the past, Darren O'Mahony, and he has done fan trailers for Assassin's Creed, and he does them incredibly well. I highly recommend checking him out. But he's doing one currently for the Siege of Paris because he's like a DLC behind, he tells me, because of COVID or whatever. But it looks phenomenal too. But in order to talk to Darren when he's finished, I was thinking to myself over Christmas, right, I have like 60 hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla and I haven't finished the main story. How about I finish that up? I'll get through the Irish DLC and then I'll get through the Paris DLC and then I'll be able to talk to him. I'm 95 hours in now after the Christmas and I still haven't finished the fucking main story. It just never ends. It never ends.
See, as the Fenian blood in me was to like, fuck the English fucking storyline. I got as far as I had to get to get to Ireland and then I fucked off.
Goodbye.
I was across the Irish Sea. I was in my longboat.
To the Pale!
I landed literally I landed in and I was like, right, let's be having a Hill of Tara. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Because you know what happened? I had gotten Valhalla for Christmas, and then I saw that the Irish DLC came out, and Blind Boy Boat Club streamed his Hill of Tara song that he did when he was like, I'm on the hill, I'm at the wedding on the Hill of Tara. He did that, whatever that was. And that was like, oh, I fucking have to check this out. And I just got the DLC and off I went. And it was just,
looking forward.
It's immersive. But again,
that immersion is another reason why, legitimacy is there. So now, I'm just looking at the clock. We have been just shy of an hour on this topic here now, which is ideal, which is lovely. And I know we've kind of touched on a lot of points here. I think we've talked on, and I'm going to go around the room, just kind of ask for any kind of like final thoughts or whether like, anybody's opinion here has shaken your initial thoughts at all. But like, just to recap for the listener, we did talk about a couple of things here. We talked about, of course, the legitimacy in terms of like, yes, we have made an awful lot of strides towards it, but perhaps we haven't like crossed that barrier yet to really truly be considered legitimate. There has of course been talks of recent financial gains in this industry, which naturally will drive more interest towards it. We've talked about even the history of games as a whole, and of course then we've talked about very briefly, and look forward to a future podcast around, I think we have crossed the barrier in a lot of ways towards legitimizing video games as art. And when you get to that point, you then have to be able to have those serious big boy conversations around this is a legitimate medium to some degree, So we've definitely gotten to it to some degree. But Shane, kind of closing statements. Like, how do you feel now after hearing all of us? Have you been any way swayed, or are you still kind of feeling the same?
Yeah, so your point about gaming being a legitimate thing because of the history and the, gaming encompasses everything from Dungeons and Dragons to throwing a ball against a wall to rolling a stick down a hill, whatever you want to do. That's obviously fully legitimate. I can't argue with that. And I won't argue that gaming is not a legitimate thing. When it comes to, I suppose, modern video gaming.
The media take on gaming.
The media take on, which can be toxic and tough in its own right, you know what I mean? Like, Wayne made the point there of how, we get terrible video game movies because they have to try to condense down this 8-hour world into a whole thing, and it doesn't help that some guy, Hollywood producer in a suit somewhere, I get a picture of, like, in my head of, like, J. Jonah Jameson going like, we need a gamer character in this movie. Oh yeah, just put a fat guy with spots on his face in a basement and
give me Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing.
Matrix Resurrections.
There we go.
Matrix Resurrections.
That kind of thing. And while that still continues on as well, we're still going to always get those people that their only, like, idea of what a gamer is comes from the news or a TV show or a movie. And that's always going to hold us back slightly. But I believe myself I say we, like I make games. I don't make games. I talk crap about them all the time. That we are a legitimate medium. Gaming is a legitimate medium to me. And it always will be. But I think in the broader public, it's still quite not there.
I think, though, there is two separate questions here. Is it legitimate to the majority of the masses? Or is it legitimate? Is the thing, because like something can be legitimate without you recognizing, or without Wayne recognizing, or without, but like it doesn't take away from its legitimacy. It just means that person's opinion of it is different. But I think, like, to your point, you're right. It's going to be a long time until that's maybe it won't be that long actually, because realistically over the last 10 years, like, it has come a long way in terms of, like, remember the Wii came around 20 years ago or whatever it was, and the Blue Ocean approach put a Wii in every grandma's home, and then Candy Crush, as you said, and you're talking about 70 billion on a company here. Like, the waves are changing, the tides have changed, and it has stood up and it demands to be recognized. So yeah, like, we're probably going to get that majority vote pretty soon. But I think that, it's just, if we look at it objectively as a medium, like, that's the big question here. Do you feel it is, and you can say no, of course, but do you feel it is a legitimate thing? As you said, your opinion is yes, but is that as, like, an objective view on the medium?
Yes, definitely. I am 100% behind it, that it is a legitimate thing. Like you said, my point was, it is two different points: the broader masses and video gaming itself. And I believe it is a legitimate thing, and to me, it is a legitimate thing. And if there's 8 billion people on this planet, if the other 7,999,000,000, whatever, blah blah, if I'm the only one who thinks it's legitimate, it's still legitimate.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, only one person needs. If that's the case, then we've already won, because I came into this believing it. Wayne, what about yourself, man? In terms of closing statements, thanks for your incredible 12 years of insights that you have kind of shared with us here today. But those feelings you had coming into this, have you been in any way, swayed in this, or are your feelings very much the same? And do you believe, objectively, that this is a legitimate medium?
I'm old, so I'm set in my way, so nothing's going to sway me at all. But I think, honest to God, I think me and Shane are on the same page in this. It's a case of it's legitimate for us, and really that's all that matters to us. Yeah. But I think so, and you probably remember this, but I'm back. We've gone past the days of where, and I'm sorry to make it sound dour or dark in any way, shape or form, but we've passed the days where they're blaming video games for violence in the real world.
For the most part, it still comes up so often.
It comes up every now and again, but it's started to die off. And to me, that is a step further towards being a legitimate realm of entertainment. There was a time where they used to blame movies on that.
True.
Yeah. And they used to blame certain books on that as well.
Yeah.
And now they've gone past blaming Marilyn Manson. They've gone past blaming playing Call of Duty day in, day out. And I think the less and less that happens, the more and more it's going to feel like it's actually been accepted in the grander scheme of things. When I go onto social media nowadays, 90% of my feed is made up of comic book stuff. The other 10% is made up of gaming. No, sorry, let me split that. Probably 60-40. So 60 would be comic books, 40 would be video games and tabletop gaming. And that's the realm that I've catered in social media. And to me, that legitimizes everything, because that's what social media does nowadays. It legitimizes everything. So I think video games in the world I live in are very legitimate. Video games in the world that my dad lives in, if it isn't Jungle Strike, not so legitimate.
Sure.
So I think we'll get there. We will get there eventually. Give it 10 years. And you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't think that video gaming as a whole isn't something that's worthwhile. Like, you know, it's been, and particularly over the last couple of years, I think it's been a balm for a lot of people. It's been an escape for a lot of people. So that is built on what it is and given us something to entertain ourselves with in these weird fucking times. So yeah, like, you know, So yeah, I think it's a case of, like as Shane had said, a certain generation is gonna, you know, kick their mortal coil. To mix my analogies, but it's a case of it's definitely it's getting there. It's gonna get there eventually. Because if it wasn't already legitimate, if it wasn't already something that's worthwhile, there wouldn't be podcasts about it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
True.
And it's a
Very
great
true.
point. It's a very good point.
You know.
And then I guess on my own kind of mental wrap up, like I agree for the most part on everything you guys are saying, and I think everything you're saying is true. I guess it's kind of like the lens by which every person looks at it is a little different, and I think to me, getting cultural majority vote that this is legitimate is less important to me, because I think because of what you said earlier, Wayne, around these financial, you know, news points coming up of 70 billion or whatever. Like, I remember back in the day when, you know, owning a computer and being interested in a computer was dumb. And then all of a sudden, Ireland opened its floodgates to all the software companies. And then I remember vividly being in my early 20s or even my late teens, and you know, my parents going, "You should get a job in them computers," when they would have bet me out the door for sitting at one like 3 years previous. And that's just the way it goes. It's because the money's there, chase the money, you know. And then again, that's going to open up a lot of doors. A lot of people are going to go, "Yeah, my young lads in them games, yeah, they're serious business them," and that's just the way it's going to be. But like, I think in terms of like, games have come a long way, and they have always had potential to come that way. Like, you know, even back on the NES, like, you had some really thought-provoking games where they were trying their best within their medium. You know, you had like, even back on the Amstrad and on the Commodore and all those, like, there was, you know, some text-based games there that were really like, you know, wild at what they were trying to do. But that kind of passion has prevailed, and the technology has only gotten better and better. And like what you're saying about Firewatch, like, that's a moving experience. And the second you get into that realm, you're it's big boy talk now, guys. It's not like, we're not talking jumping on mushrooms anymore here, guys. We're talking like a legitimate medium here, you know. And I think that's what it is. And I think, as we said earlier, it kind of falls into two halves. Is it legitimate? I would argue yes. Has the world woken up to that yet? Probably not on the majority, but we're on the cusp, you know. And if somebody can spend 70 billion on games and us not be on the cusp, pack it in now. Like, I don't know. But I think that's where we are. So guys, the main thing we want to know is, what do you think at home? Do you believe this is a legitimate medium? And do you feel that the kind of cultural buy-in is important? Or do you feel that, like, hey, I believe it, that's enough? I really want to know what you guys think. And if you do want to let us know what you think, you can do so in a number of ways. If you do, look down below in the description of wherever you find this podcast today, whether that's on Apple, whether it's on Spotify. We're not on Stitcher. I know that we got called out on the podcast for that, and Shane, we need to look into this.
Sort that shit out.
It's like the one place we're probably not on.
Yeah.
But wherever you find this fine podcast today, do look at the description. There's many social links for you, but the best places to go would probably be our Facebook page, which is the Casual Game Community over on Facebook, because we're old Irish dinosaurs and we still use Facebook quite heavily. You can use our Discord, the link is down below, or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, but just make sure to tag at Casual Game Co, just so we can be sure to see it. And we really want to hear about it, so let us know, guys. But with all that being said, and with the kind of general consensus, I believe, of legitimate medium, not massively culturally there yet, but we're getting there, I have the absolute pleasure of saying goodbye to fine folks by saying goodbye to the ever wonderful Shane Bowe. Shane Bowe, say goodbye to the lovely people.
Goodbye, lovely people. You're ever so wonderful.
Thank you so much. And I have the absolute honor of saying goodbye to Irish podcasting, comic book, and you name it legend, Wayne Talbot. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us. We do hope to have you again soon. And please say goodbye to the lovely, lovely people.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me. No pressure at all with that moniker that's been landed on me. Oh,
before we say goodbye, we have to continue the tradition, Wayne, that we do around here.
Mm-hmm.
We always ask the guest or someone who is on the show, who should the listeners tell about the show? A butcher, a lollipop lady, your milkman, your postman. So Wayne, who should the listeners tell about the show?
who should they tell about? Your local bin man, because he'll need something to listen to when he's cleaning out all your shite.
That's not a bad show. That's actually a very economical suggestion.
Yes. Yes. Tell the bin man, everybody. Shout it at your bin man when he's picking up your bin. Bin woman. It's 2022. Bin woman.
Always thank your bin person, because they know all your deepest, darkest secrets. Because be damn sure they're going through your rubbish.
Yes, do tell them to watch and listen to the Casual Gamecast, and also tell them to check out the Pubcast while they're there. A little known Pubcast, you know.
Well, I mean, there are for this particular audience as a whole, for a gaming audience as a whole, we're very proud. This are probably most downloaded episodes that are currently available on our feed. There's a 3-part video gaming series that talks about the history of video games.
Awesome.
And it's a 3-part thing, so like it's a really long discussion that's broken into 3 episodes that talks about the inception of when we first started gaming as a group, all the way through to at the time when it was recorded, which is a good few years ago now, with the modern day gaming. So it does hit a certain date and then stop, but it does talk. So it is actually our most downloaded episode, next to our Pokemon episode that Kim was very proud of. But check us out at Pubcast, and you'll find us on roguecomicsIreland.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, and we will be putting links to all of those in the description below, so do check them out. I've been Phil, he's been Shane, he has been Wayne, and this has been episode 68 of the Casual Gamecast. Take care, stay safe, but most of all, stay casual. Good luck, everybody! Good luck!